Hello, this video is going to be slightly different to previous videos in that I will not be covering a particular fight or scenario. I am going to be giving some general tips for a new leader to consider whilst they are starting to learn to lead. I will be covering a couple of topics, but there will be no video coverage to go with it, so treat it more like a podcast. Regardless, I hope you enjoy. The first thing I would like to focus on is what I see as the most common mistake made by new leaders, which is that they try and use the same builds that they use when they're not leading when they first start to lead. These can often be quite complex builds, and so their focus is more on applying the build and using the right skills than it is to actually leading. When you are in a group and you are leading, you should focus absolutely on leading and not on your skills being used. For example, even though I am a very experienced leader, when I am leading, my build and my skills are very much just using proxy detonation at the beginning of a fight and then spamming Breath of Life. I do not do any more than that, other than maybe refreshing a proxy detonation if there is a lull in the fight. And I am a very experienced leader. If you try and use a complicated build when you are new to leading, you will confuse yourself, and what will end up happening is that you are focusing so much on your build during fights that you go silent as a leader. When you are leading, it is far more important to focus on leading than it is to apply your skills. There will be 15, 20, however many other people in your group that are completely focused on applying the skills. Leave that to them. You focus on leading. With that out of the way, I'd like to focus on the difference between strategy and tactical decisions in my opinion. I define strategy as deciding which keeps to attack and understanding where in the maps will be and how best to manage those enemies, whereas tactics is the decisions made during the fights themselves to defeat what enemies you do encounter. A good raid leader needs to be able to do both of these well, however most will have a natural tendency towards one or the other. I tend to find that new raid leaders are better at strategic decisions than they are at tactical decisions. This is because they've already been in groups with other raid leaders, and whilst those raid leaders are making strategic decisions, they'll often explain why those decisions are made, and therefore the group members can learn the understanding and the way to apply these decisions, so that when they themselves lead, they understand these decisions from a better place. However, with tactical decisions, since these by their very nature are made very quickly and during fights, there is no time for the raid leader to explain why they made these decisions, so the group members end up just going along, doing what they're told, without really understanding why they are doing what they are doing. However, as a raid leader, it's important that you recognise your own strengths and weaknesses and understand which is your natural tendency. I've seen raid leaders that have natural tendency towards both of these, and it does affect how they lead. For example, a raid leader that is more strategically inclined will often go behind enemy lines, avoiding the enemy, do more PvD, i.e. taking empty heaps, and earn their AP and success that way, whereas a more tactically minded leader will focus more on finding fights even if they're not contributing as much towards the fight. For example, on the blue side, they may move to Sejanus Bridge and be able to fight both reds and yellows at Sejanus Bridge whilst not actually taking anything on the map. There's pros and cons to both of these, and there's no right or wrong, but it's important for a raid leader to understand which they fit in more naturally and develop accordingly. There is no problem with having a natural tendency towards one or the other, as long as you recognise this and apply it. However, this is an important point to be made in that as a raid leader you should still, wherever possible, seek to join groups and follow other raid leaders in order to develop further. For example, as I say, I have a tendency towards strategic leading, and therefore I always enjoy following a lead which is has a more tendency towards tactical thinking, so that I can learn from them. Experienced raid leaders can often think that they don't have a lot to learn from other raid leaders, but I strongly disagree with this. I think that everyone always has something to learn, especially with the naturally changing environment in which we all play due to changing builds and changing rule sets by patches, which heavily influence how fights should be fought. If you don't learn from others, you will soon fall behind and your effectiveness will be reduced because you do not understand what is strong in the current meta. Another important skill that a group leader should be able to do is be able to assess the power level of their group on a given play session. Most group leaders will play in guilds that people vary, and therefore the power level of a given group on a given night may also vary. It is important that you can assess this and therefore be able to understand which fights you can and cannot participate in a given night. For example, when I am leading Wolves, if I assess that we are strong on a given night, then I will play far more aggressively and seek out fights, whereas if I assess that we are fairly weak, for example if we are low on healers, then I will seek to play more defensively and avoid the other big guilds where possible. It's important to be able to develop this skill for everyone's enjoyment, because if you are powerful and you seek easy fights, then you're not challenging yourself, and if you are weak and you seek hard fights, then you will consistently wipe, neither of which maximise the enjoyment of the group. I find a quick way of assessing the power level of a group is first to glance at the overall numbers of the group. If you have less than 12 players, you simply do not have the full group size to be able to have the wide variety of skills that are needed for large group PvP. If you are 12 to 18 people, it doesn't really matter exact numbers, because you have filled what I call a critical mass. What I mean by critical mass is enough people that you can cover each other and have a wide range of skills available to you to be able to adapt to any situation. I would remind everyone here that this is a video focused on large-scale PvP. I fully recognise that there are guilds and groups that play very effectively with less than 12 people. However, that is not how I play and how I focus these videos. If you play one of these groups, feel free to continue to listen, but you are not directly aimed at for these sort of videos. Once I have assessed a group size, my next step to understanding the power level of the group on a given night is often to try and find a fight against one of the two guilds that I think are very similar in power level to us as a benchmark. If we do find a fight against these guilds and we lose, then I know that we're on the weaker side, and if we win, we're on the stronger side. This can be a very quick and simple way at the beginning of a fight to assess power level. Of course, I fully recognise that over a play session people may leave or join a group, so the power level may change. However, it gives a good benchmark to begin with. Another consideration that a raid leader will need to develop and understand as they start to lead more and more is the level of communication they wish to use during fights. I have experience with both raid leaders that talk a lot during fights and give lots of information in a pretty much constant basis, and others which say very little but are still just as effective by focusing on key points and just calling out those. I personally fall into the former. I talk a lot during fights, as anyone that's been in my group will know, but that doesn't mean that that is the only way of doing things, and as I say, I've seen people say very little and still be very effective. You just need to decide where your natural tendency is, and don't worry if you are doing different to other people. I've had feedback from other people that I've trained as leaders that they say, oh, I can't be as good as you because I'm not doing what you're doing. That is not the mindset to have. There are very different ways of leading, and just because I do it in one way doesn't mean that's the only way of doing it. However, one thing that I do think that everyone should be consistent on is the use of keywords to designate certain pieces of information. For example, whenever I'm leading, if I'm attacking a keep and I am attacking the flags, the flag furthest away from the inner main gate will always be the back flag, and the flag closest to the inner main gate will always be the front flag. There are other examples of keywords like this throughout my leadership style, but I think it is very critical to develop these so that during fights it avoids confusion. Because, for example, if I need to group the group up very quickly, I can just say gather up on the top flag, and everyone knows exactly what that means and will do it very quickly. Whereas if I had to explain exactly what I meant, then that could lose precious seconds, and it could be the difference between a group wiping and being successful. If you want further feedback on the keywords I use, I'm happy to share this. Just get in touch and I'll tell you the full range of keywords that I use. Another thing that a raid leader should use where possible is some sort of add-on that tracks the ultimates of the group. For the moment, the Wolves are using an add-on called RDK, however there are other add-ons available which also do similar effects. By being able to track the ultis of the group, you will be able to see whether you can deploy those ultis in an effective way and do a big burst of DPS that can be able to wipe the group, an enemy group. If you do not track this, you would not have this visibility and therefore not know whether your group is ready to do a big push into an enemy group, and therefore it hampers your decision making. So this is an easy trick that can just help your decision making and help you with the tactical decisions during fights. The final and perhaps most important point that I'll make during this video is the need for practice. Some raid leaders get disappointed if their first few raids don't go particularly successfully. However, in my experience, this is just part of the learning curve, and for the vast majority of raid leaders I see come through do struggle in the first couple of raids. Don't worry if this is the case. A lot of this comes with practice. I've been leading for years, and other raid leaders that have been leading for years just have practice that you guys as new leaders don't have. Don't worry about this, and don't worry if your first experiences are not particularly positive. Just keep at it. It does come with practice. I would also encourage you all to seek feedback where possible, both from group members and other leaders if available. However, do bear in mind what I said previously about each raid leader being individual and the need to develop your own style. So that's it. That's the basics that I think are important for a raid leader to understand if they are new to raid leading. As always, if there's anything you'd like me to cover in a future video, please let me know. And otherwise, I hope you found this information useful and relevant. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.